Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 7, 2021 Elyria City Council meeting. At this time, I'm going to take a moment of reflective silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Tollett, would you still please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Tollett. Mr. Clerk, can I have roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan. Mr. Sierra.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Baird.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Keys.
Here.
Mr. Jesse.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
10 present, 1 absent. Mr. Callahan, and we've got an excuse here.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Sarah, second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Public hearings.
We have a few. You are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m. during Elyria City Council meeting to consider the following. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to FGFF Rafa International Center, Inc., for a child care and aftercare center at real property located at 700 Gulf Road, Elyria, Ohio.
Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? I declare this public hearing has been held.
An ordinance granting conditional use permit pursuant to Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, to FGF Rafa International Center, Inc., for a child care and aftercare center at real property located at 700 Gulf Road, Elyria, Ohio.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sears. Any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-128.
Mr. Clerk, what was that ordinance number? 128?
128. You are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in council chambers, second floor, City of Elyria, 131 Court Street, to consider the following. An ordinance amending Section 1131.02 Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to rezone real property located on Longfellow Street, Elyria, Ohio, from R-TH Residential 2 Household District to a B-G Business General District.
Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? I declare this public hearing has been held.
An ordinance amending Section 1131.02 Codified Ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to rezone real property located on Longfellow Street, Elyria, Ohio, from R-TH Residential 2 Household District to B-G Business General District.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Ms. Mr. Sierra, is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-129. And that's all public hearings?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Sierra. Second by Mr. Bear. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Council President, and good evening, City Council members. There's a lot to update, but I'll save them for another time. Really just want to spend a little bit of time and welcome all the students back to school now for the school year. And in particular, today we're going to be celebrating one of our own students, Miss Fiona Duncan. And I got a chance to meet Miss Fiona back in July of 2019 when she was a part of the Lemonade Stand Challenge. And this young lady is special. She definitely embodies that Elyria entrepreneurial spirit. We were over at the Lorain County Community College as they were learning about business, and she was something to remember. She was going like behind the desk at LCC trying to sell people lemonade. I don't know if you remember that. They had to keep telling us to come from behind the desk. So she's really an inspiration. I have a proclamation here I'm going to read, and then I think she has some remarks she wants to give. So whereas Fiona Cassidy Duncan was born with a medical condition called craniostenosis, Fiona has had several surgeries and wishes to support the families of other children who will have similar experiences as she's had. Fiona researched ways in which she could help others and chose to support the efforts of Mercy Ship, an international charity that delivers free medical care to the developing world using hospital ships. And whereas Fiona demonstrates her entrepreneurial spirit by operating her lemonade stand business at the corner of East River Road and University Avenue in Elyria, and whereas Fiona demonstrates her spirit of altruism in deciding that 100% of her proceeds will benefit Mercy Ships, Fiona has sent more than $1,500 this summer to help those in need. Now, therefore, I, Frank Whitfield, Mayor of the City of Elyria, do hereby honor and thank Fiona Cassidy Duncan for an exemplary spirit of humanity leading the way to a better world. Thank you, Fiona. Nothing further, Council President.
Very good. Ms. Duncan, thank you for your leadership and your inspiration for others. You can lead by example, and this is proof that, you know, we should take your lead in a lot of things that we do. So thank you for your commitment and what you do. Thank you. Mayor Whitfield, you had nothing more? You're good? Okay. Safety Service Director Brubaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. There is a lot going on, and just a couple. I'd like to give kudos out to several of our departments. One of them is our water distribution entire team. Several weeks ago, we had a major water break behind BASF, which was literally on the river. It was one of our main lines. It caused our towers to go down drastically. Mr. Jacob was actually on a Zoom call and saw on the monitor everything going down. Our distribution team went out and was looking for this leak, but where it was, nobody could see it because it was literally by the river. Fortunately, BASF realized the issue was on their side, and the team was able to respond and get the water shut off within about 30 minutes of the notification, allowed the towers to go back up. It affected some of the businesses on the east side of town, but due to their quick work and being able to stop the water flow, because it was about a 30-inch main, so it was draining water very quickly. So kudos to our water distribution team, as well as also a week and a half ago, our wastewater team was called out to a house on East River. In a 1200 block, the resident there had worked on their vehicle, set their fuel tank of the truck on the side of the house, and the fuel from the tank leaked. They thought it was best that they would water it down and dilute it, which caused the water and the gas to eventually find its way into the footer tile of the house next door, which caused the resident and the 3-year-old child to have to leave. And one of our workers that's actually here tonight, Mr. Christopher, actually stayed all night long at the resident's home to make sure that the water that was seeping into the sump pump had to be turned off by the fire department for obvious reasons. But he stayed and cupped and barreled that water out to make sure nothing else spilled out until we could get Chemtron there the next day. So kudos to Brandon Christopher as well as Aaron Stefik for responding to that, as well as Mr. Corzan and some other members of the wastewater team. And the last thing I have is not a great of importance, but remember earlier this year, council appropriated about $30,000 to buy 2 additional columbariums out at Brookdale Cemetery. Those were set 2 weeks ago and engraved, and those are 162 of them are available for sale. We've already sold 6 of them this week. So that was, issue $6 capital outlay, being able to spruce up our cemetery and add additional things, such as the columbarium that residents have been asking for, because the ones we have, quite frankly, are full. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Director Brubaker? Very good. Finance Director Plesky.
Nothing this time, Mr. President.
All right, very good. Law Director Deary.
Good evening, Mr. President. I have no report at this time. Thank you.
Very good. Elyria Police Department, Chief Whiteley.
Good evening. I got 2 things to report. First, today was the first day of school. I got several emails about Eastern Heights. Things did not go well there. It being a new school, a new traffic pattern, and a lot of people trying to get in there at one time created some issues. I have our day shift and our afternoon shift, not just working Eastern Heights, but they're going to work all the school zones as best they can when officers are not on calls for service. And the second thing is our investigative unit made an arrest on the homicide that occurred on Broad Street this past weekend, and the subject is in custody and is on his way to the county jail.
Very good, Chief. Thank you very much. Any questions for Chief Whiteley? Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Chief Whiteley, today on the news I heard that Governor DeWine has made available through the COVID Recovery Act funds for police departments to apply for a grant for body cameras.
We will look into that. We do have
I sincerely hope that's something we will. I think it's up to 30,000 or something like that. So I sincerely hope that the police department will apply for that grant.
And I think Mr. Williams later has something to say about that. Is that correct?
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Whiteley? Very good. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for all the work you do in the Elyria Police Department. Elyria Fire Department. Chief Pernesti.
Good evening, Fire Department. As you know, I took over on August 1st.
Thank you. Pay that guy. Started on August 1st as interim chief. Things are going very well there. It's calm internally. We have placed into service one of the engines that we just purchased. The other one is due in late October. We'll get that into service. But all in all, things are going well. The chief's exam is scheduled for October 20th. I plan on taking it. I'm signed up for it. I hope there's no competition because I enjoy the job and I I hope to continue this. So it is a good, I am enjoying it and enjoying serving the citizens and the city. Now, one thing that is on the rise that I wanted to talk tonight about is our EMS calls are through the roof. I had a meeting or talked to Dave Richards, who is the CEO at Life Care. Calls in the city of Elyria are up over 20%. They are running out of ambulances at times. We are stretched thin running first responder. It is what it is. We've had an increase in trauma, a lot of accidents, a lot of violent type of injuries, shootings, stabbings, but we are really at an increase that we haven't seen before, and we'll keep our eye on it. I sent with each one of you a breakdown of our calls, and I have your wards. So when you look at that, you'll be able to see the calls for the month or from the year, the beginning of the year until August for that, but it's something we need to keep an eye on. We're still going out the door. We will continue to go out the door, but it is incredibly busy compared to what I've seen and Dave Richards has seen at Life Care. So that's all I have tonight. I look forward to meeting with you. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I would like to speak to each one of you, and I have nothing else at this time. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Ms. Davis?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we got a new truck. So where did you put that new truck?
We have one new engine is Cedar Street. That covers 50% of the city. So if you think of the downtown area, the south end of town, and the Eastern Heights, all the way to East Broad Street, it covers pretty much the largest area of the city. And then the other truck is going to the north side to the Abbey Road Fire Station that covers pretty much all the north side of St. Jude's area, as we call it. And then the engine on the west side, engine 3, has a brand new motor in it. It's like new. So I want to thank you all. You've done a wonderful job getting us up to speed in a short period of time. So we do have other needs, but we'll talk about that another time. And but thank you. Yes,
Mr. Oswald. Okay.
Yeah, I shut it off. Just information, I had a conversation with Fire Marshal Dahl, and somebody in my ward had mentioned that they walked through the 911 building and said, I don't think I see any fire suppression system in there. We got a lot of computers in there, and, you know, if in case we have a fire in there, what are we going to do? Well, trying to find out who I'm supposed to get information from was like jumping through hoops. Finally, I went and talked to the marshal, and so he says, let me check in on it. So evidently, 911, even though it's 911, it fell in the same parameters of what the building was, so they didn't have to add any suppression system or any sprinkler system. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem right. If the computers go down, we're kind of screwed, you know? So we got back and forth and with the supervisor over there. And so for my knowledge, now I know that you can't have these Helon. They're outdated. They don't really think that there's that much need for anything more because there's someone there 24/7. But what they did say is that Fire Marshal Dahl would like to do some training with all the people. So they have set up training now, and sometime in October he's hoping to have that finalized with all the people there so that they can know who knows how to use a fire extinguisher. So they're going to go through the training, put that on their regular books. For just that person that asked me that question, I think we got a lot of knowledge. Now, you still have human error when somebody's using a fire extinguisher, and to me, I would think that the county would spend the money to do a system just in case so we don't have to worry about human error, but that's probably a very expensive issue. So, but anyhow, all that information I thought was really good, and I'm glad I got that question asked to me. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald.
the one thing I will say real quick to that is that's very common in the city. You have to remember the city of Elyria, a lot of older buildings, a lot of existing buildings. We're bound by code. We can't make somebody change unless there's a classification in what they're delivering in that building is the best way to say it to you. And but that's just That's an issue of older cities like ours. It's just the way it is as far as sprinklers.
Very good. Any other questions for Chief Pernesti? Thank you, Chief. Assistant Safety Service Director Calvert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will keep my remarks short because I know we have a full agenda tonight. But I wanted to let the council know that we have received 4 different grant applications through the city downtown redevelopment programs that we have available. So those are going to be reviewed by the EEDC coming up soon. But wanted to let you know that interest in reinvesting in downtown Elyria is very strong, and that pipeline is definitely there, and we're looking forward to receiving even more applications in the near future. And also just wanted to mention that the mayor and I had an opportunity to tour Diamond Products, which was an absolutely amazing tour that we got to see them live and well, a long track record of industry in Elyria, a great community partner, and just a really great opportunity to see them do their best work and see how that they've been supporting the construction trade throughout the pandemic. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions for Ms. Calvert? Very good. Thank you, Ms. Calvert, for the update. Assistant Safety Service Director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to update council on the development and the announcement of what we're calling a Safety Service Law Enforcement Committee, which is charged with the implementation and deployment of body cams and dash cams. We had our first meeting on the 31st last week, and the committee consists of representation from the law department, communications, IT, 2 of the captains from the police department, myself from the Safety Service Director's office, and then administrative support. That's the fixed committee. We are going to request through the president that we have 2 council members appointed to that committee, if they so desire. And then we will meet with finance and different other departments as need be. Very good first meeting. We think that this initiative is going to go relatively quickly. We expect that we will have deployment in the year 2022. We've kind of set out a 12-month window for ourselves, and then we're setting our schedule, and then we'll kind of back ourselves into that. But really excited. Each committee member is charged with something from their area of expertise, and we think this will efficiently and thoroughly give us a policy that we can implement with fidelity. To your point, Councilwoman, Governor DeWine announced today a $10 million budget item for the purchase of primarily body-worn systems. And so we received that information today, and we'll be looking to applying for that, as well as a number of other grants that will contribute towards the purchase of equipment, towards training. We also know that we have great long-term costs in terms of data storage, so we're looking at all of those pieces. Lots of finances out there available, and we're committed to implementing this policy. We think it's a great asset to policing, transparency, accountability, and through our law department, we believe there will be even great savings in terms of mitigating litigation. So any questions you have around that, I would be happy to entertain.
I know that Mr. Williams and Mr. Jessica can kind of, or other members of council can kind of weigh in it, but I think that was one of the issues that we pledged for our issue 6 renewal, was that we were going to go ahead and look into and be supportive of the body cams, not only protecting, the Elyria police, but our residents as well. And so I think it's something that we'll engage with in these conversations and be a win-win for everybody over and through. So when do you anticipate the first meeting coming to finance, or?
Well, so what our plan is we have a few meetings. We have to do some observation of some systems. We're looking at other departments throughout the state who use them similar to ours. The committee will meet again in 2 weeks. We expect that we'll bring you something concrete, I would suggest by the end of October. We will have done some homework in information gathering, and then a further, more in detailed plan will be proceeding from there.
Okay. Any questions in regards to the body cams by?
Council President,
Mayor Whitfield?
So I was going to ask Director Williams to speak to the dash cam piece, because that was something that came out of these discussions that I don't think we walked in thinking about. But if you could speak to kind of the logic behind that.
So everyone's become more familiar with the body cam component. Many departments have utilized what's called dash cam. This is the camera that is placed on the dash of the police cruiser. And some folks have asked, well, why get dash cam when you're getting body cam? Well, dash cam provides another perspective, another lens. So if we're looking at pursuing chases, there are certain protocols and policies that dash cams will provide us for in that regard. Also, dash cam always provides you with audio. Two cars pull onto a scene, there's something going on outside, we will be able to capture the audio. And when you don't have video, audio is another tool of information that can really help with transparency and identifying what happened. So the dash cam is a critical component. The programs that we're looking at would utilize both dash cam and body cam interactively. So those are some of the things that we're looking at with prospective companies providing that technology. There's an additional component where they have a camera located in the car that helps capture what's happening in the car. So again, these are packaged now nicely, so it might be just a nice, succinct 3-camera deal, body, dash, and the interior. But the committee will review that and make the best decision, I think, going forward.
Very good. Any other questions? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Mr. Williams, I did not hear on the news piece, is there a deadline to apply for the grant?
Yes, October the 8th. So that's, yes, so we have our team of grant writers who are helping us with this. Many of these programs, what's very important is they give certain guidelines on implementation plans. So we think our timing is pretty good. It doesn't mean you have to implement your plan by that date, but you have to submit your grant and proposal of implementation. So again, we believe that we will have enough information so that we can take advantage of that window.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Mitchell.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, no, so you'll have that information before finance, before the October
Yes.
the 8th, so that we can apply for that grant. Okay.
Yes.
Just so there's an understanding. Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President. So how often do you have your meetings? Are they like once a week, every 2 weeks? Do you have scheduled weekly or monthly?
So we had our first meeting, and part of our meetings are driven by our task. Some tasks don't require us to meet together, but individual assignments. We will begin starting to review different body cam opportunities, different companies, different protocols. We're creating the policy around this. We have to do all of the work. And so some of our law directors working on the policy component, leading that component, the assistant law director. The police are looking at different types of cam outfits in terms of how they function. IT's doing their part. So I expect that in 2 weeks we'll have another meeting. And at that time, we will try to lay out our complete meeting schedule with timelines and how we want to execute the agenda. So we'll have an update for you at the next council meeting on exactly our meeting schedule.
Okay, because through you, Mr. President, what I found out is things kind of sometimes lag, and I want to keep the ball rolling. And sometimes when you don't say we're having scheduled meetings, then it keeps getting pushed further and further. So I'm hoping you guys just keep up on it, and I know you got to gather a lot of information.
Yes, and that's why we put a timeline of implementation out there, so we can work backwards from that, and that's going to drive us, so we make sure we don't drop the ball or become distracted by other opportunities in business.
Very good. Is there any further questions for Mr. Williams? All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Human Resources, Ms. Yousefi. Wastewater Pollution Control, Mr. Corzine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to have a short discussion about the 2 storms we had back in August, and we'll want to circle back on some of these ideas at a later date. While there's no doubt that over time rain events have intensified, 26 years ago we've never had storms like we've been seeing over the past several years. I put together a couple of charts in your packet that show the numbers of storms and different amounts of rains for each year. If you look at the two-page chart, you can see which months over the years 2012 to 2021 are the wettest and the total rain amounts for each year. The data, similar data for years prior to that is archived, and I couldn't get to that as readily. But one thing that you would see is that the seasons have shifted. Back in the 95 to the early 2000 years, most of the rainfall would occur in the spring, like March, April, and May. Now, if you look at that chart, you'll see that it's pretty much all over the board. And the total rainfall for each year is on that chart. The second chart is, I think, more important because it shows rain events that we were called out to check overflows, which means that the plant flow is about 30 MGD. And what that chart does is it weeds out all the smaller rains that really don't cause any issues. That's the more important of the two charts. The storms that are highlighted on that chart are typically the ones that cause street and basement flooding, although we can't dismiss the column that has rain events between 1 and 2 inches, because depending on how fast those rains come down will dictate what types of issues they cause. Obviously, the shorter period of time that it comes down, the more issues we're going to have, and that we do have. So climate experts, if you look at the recent events in Waverly, Tennessee, where they got 12 inches of rain over a 24-hour period of time, and with this latest hurricane that went through and did all that damage on the East Coast in those 4 states, a tremendous amount of damage, loss of life and everything. The climate experts are saying that global warming and climate change is definitely causing stronger storms, and the chances of seeing these stronger storms have doubled. And they expect to see a lot more of these in the future. In your packet, I've included 2 articles that detail the effects of climate change. One that's more related toward the United States, and the second one is more focused on global climate warming. But now getting to the rain events that we had, on August 13th, we had a storm that dropped over 3 inches of rain on the southeast quadrant of the city. And that happened in 3 very heavy downpours over very short periods of time. Between 5:30 and 5:55, that's 25 minutes, we had 1¼ inches of rain. 10 minutes later, we were up to 2 inches. So that means that in that 10-minute period of time, we got 3/4 of an inch of additional rain. That's just unbelievable. Shortly after that, our rain gauges were showing 3 inches of rain. And that's a lot of rain, averaging about 1 inch every 25 minutes. That storm calculated out to be a 200 to 300-year storm event. All the storm sewers and ditches were just overloaded. Just absolutely had no chances of, taking that kind of water. Then, on August 25th, we had another very intense storm that centered mostly over the northeast section of the city. At 6:27 in the morning on that day, we already had 1/4 inch of rain, and by 6:50, we were up to 2 inches. So that's 3/4 inch of rain, additional rain, in a 23-minute period of time. Again, just hellacious amounts of rain coming down. And by the time the largest downpours were over, we were between 2 and 3 inches of rain, depending on where you were at. So, and again, all this happened over very short periods of time. At the onset of this storm, our rain gauge indicated that we were getting rain at a rate of 6¼ inches an hour. That's insane. But let's go back to the Waverly flood. They got 12 inches in a 24-hour period of time. We were getting 6 inches an hour at the beginning of that storm. That's unbelievable. So, obviously, the bottom line of this is that our sewers can handle 2 to 3 inches of rain over a 24 to 48 period, or even a 36-hour period of time. But storm sewers aren't going to handle rains of this magnitude coming down in such short amounts of time. But, we're always looking for solutions. We know climate change is here. We've been dealing with it for a long time. Just just over the years that I've been here, just looking at these rains and just, it's just incredible. And it affects our permit at the plant. The shifts in the seasons that the permits don't follow, and that, You know, it's stuff that we have to deal with. So I had some meetings with Engineer Schneider and Assistant Engineer McKillips over the last week and a half, and we put together a list. First of all, our crews just finished televising all of the storm sewers on the southeast side of Elyria, and they didn't find anything unusual like blockages in the pipes or anything like that. That would be an easy fix. But all that data is going to be reviewed, and we're going to try to see what are we looking at and what can be done in that area. This isn't the first time that the southeast side has been swamped by a rain event like this. There have been several over the last few years. City engineer is currently studying the Spring Valley area for future projects, and I think we're all aware of that. There are some sanitary sewer projects that need to be looked at for the Abbey Road North area, however. When the East Side Release Sewer was being constructed in the area of Abbey Road and Whitman, we had the junction structure in that intersection designed with a 36-inch blank going to the northeast in that structure to accept a future 36-inch sanitary release sewer from the Abbey Road North area during rain events. A new 36-inch relief sewer would help the area north of Bedford Avenue off of Abbey. Would include Hartford, Sherwood, Wilder, Livermore, Fairwood, Georgetown, and Salem Avenues. And if we can get those excess flows out of the existing sewers, that would help some of the other areas on Abbey Road to use the existing sewers without the difficulty that they have right now. In addition, the 14-inch windward siphon pipe that takes most of the Abbey North flows to the plant needs to be replaced. We had a blowout in that pipe back in 2013. We've been watching that. It's currently a one-barrel siphon, and it could be redesigned as a two-barrel siphon where you have the smaller barrel take the regular dry weather flow, and you have a larger barrel that would handle the wet weather flow. There's a lot of studies that need to be done with that, but that would be a great improvement to the Abbey North area if we could get something like that looked at. These projects would also include private side infiltration studies to look for downspouts going into the sanitary sewer, broken laterals that are like, you know, leaking like a sieve, allowing additional rainwater into the sanitary sewer. And we'd like to get these projects into the feasibility study and then into design. We don't have the cost for these studies at this point. And I don't know if this is something that could be funded out of the sewer fund, or if it's something that we could possibly use the ARPA, some of the ARPA funds for. These projects are outside of the scope of our comprehensive wet weather plan that's currently underway. I know that we're looking for see what comes out of the $1.3 trillion Infrastructure Improvement and Jobs Act that passed the Senate and is set for a House vote sometime late September. And there's also the $3.5 trillion budget resolution that's currently been paused by Senator Manchin. I'm hoping that that pause doesn't affect the first piece of legislation from being passed, because even when that passes and it's signed, it's going to take quite some time for municipalities to start seeing money out of that. So again, from where we're at currently, the quicker we get these studies completed, the quicker we could possibly have some solutions underway. But I'll take any questions at this point.
Mr. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, just want to thank you so much for everything that you do and your crews. I know you have an incredibly difficult job when people have water in their basements and you have to go out and talk to them. Always impressed. And within the last week, I mentioned two houses, two residents that wanted to have their laterals looked at, and you've already been out and done those. So real kudos to you and everybody in your department.
Thank you.
And just to kind of dovetail what Mr. Jesse says, this is kind of what we met at the last Finance Committee meeting about the ARP funds and this possible infrastructure bill that's coming through, that we need to kind of be prudent with what we're spending on this money and look at every opportunity that we can to capitalize on improving the infrastructure of our city. And This is obviously not the first time that you had mentioned in your comments about it, the southeast, but it's always the northeast portion of the town. But that doesn't mean that the northwest and the southwest don't have issues as well. So we appreciate your leadership, like Mr. Jesse said, and so we need to but it doesn't mean we can't stop planning and looking forward to implement a plan for a design package to kind of alleviate a lot of these problems. Mr. Serra?
Through you, Mr. President. Terry, when we spoke last week about some of this stuff, especially off Abbey Road, you'd indicated that at times there's grants available for this stuff, but it would have to be shovel-ready. So that feasibility study would be part of that, getting it shovel-ready?
Right now, we're putting into, the state of Ohio has some grant funds available, and we've already applied for a number of projects through the city engineers department for those monies. We don't know what we're going to get out of that. The competition on that is extremely fierce. It's only $250 million spread across the entire state of Ohio. So, if we could, if we would get $5 million out of that, we might consider ourselves blessed. If we could somehow, hit $10 million out of that, that'd be phenomenal. But with things like that, you just don't know. So we're trying to look at all the possibilities, and if we have some things that we can get moving forward on, studies obviously aren't as expensive as the actual construction projects. So, being able to kick off some of this stuff and get some things moving. We've been talking about some of this stuff for a while, and if we can get some of this stuff moving, it'd be a great thing. At least see what's possible. Because right now we have ideas, we think we know what can work, but until you get these studies done, you might run into other things. I know right now we have one sewer that we have to put flow monitors in just to see where that sewer surcharge is at. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Corzine? Thank you, Mr. Corzine.
Thank you.
Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. President. Got a few items I want to update council on. Today, the street sweeping Phase 2 portions kicked off today, so you might have seen some pink signs out there in the downtown area. They basically do the same loop. This will be the second time for this year. So we just ask that you see those no parking signs, please don't park there while we sweep the streets. TLCI project also started off today. That includes sidewalk in the downtown area as well as some new street lighting. We're still updating some of the street lighting we have in the downtown area, so that project is moving forward. I just wanted to update council. Next week, we're going to be closing Gulf Road on Tuesday to do some sewer repairs, as well as Burns Road the rest of the week to do some culvert repairs before we start some roadway projects up there. But the roadway projects will come later, but these items are storm sewer related issues. I also wanted to let council know that on October 14th at 4:30 to 5:30, we plan on having a public meeting for the East Broad Street project. It will be here in council chambers. I will send letters out once the letters are complete and we start handing those out to the residents and everything, and so you will be copied on those. So if you have any questions for me other than that.
Mr. Schneider, I do have a question. I know there might have been a recent repair on Gulf Road, southbound lane, west lane, for a water valve repair. I know there might have been some settling over and through there. I got a couple calls. Is there a way that we can kind of maybe add?
You're talking about EC?
Yes.
Okay, yes, they installed a valve over there. There's actually a water main breakout in the middle of 57 that's currently, the main is shut off.
Okay.
That's why they had to install the valve, because the
Okay,
location.
very good. The call was that there was just some, the settling over and through, and I'm sure that's, we just need to see if we can bring attention to that to fix that.
Sure.
Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, Fowle Road at Mount Vernon is still scheduled to be closed tomorrow
Correct.
from 8 to 5?
Correct. Where the developer out there is extending the storm culvert from their retention pond over to the storm sewer over there, so that portion of Fowle Road will be
Thank you. And Mr. President, through you, when can we expect to see streets starting? repair?
We keep asking the contractor ourselves, all the contractors that we have, we keep being told, late September, early October right now. They have until the middle of November to complete these projects, so, I know they've been behind on a lot of projects due to the rain this year, because it seems to be raining every other day. So it pushed a lot of their projects back as of right now, but, we are on them, we keep hounding them, and I will let you know as soon as I know.
Very good. Mr. Sierra?
Through you, Mr. President, is that both phases, or has phase two come back yet, or?
Yes, we did have, we actually broke out phase two into phase two and phase three, because there were some concrete portions of phase three. We figured if this way, concrete work isn't typically done by the asphalt guys. They usually hire subs, so we just split it out as well. So, all the projects have been bid out, so, we're still just finalizing some of the contracts, but.
Very good.
Thank you.
Ms. Keys?
Through you, Mr. President, Mr. Schneider, could somebody from your office call our street sweeping company and ask them to go through our neighborhoods just a little bit slower? They tend to like really rush, and I don't think that they do as good a job as what we pay them to do. So thank you.
Yeah, we did receive some complaints from phase one earlier this year. We do have more eyes on them, that we plan on keeping eyes on them, and we will. I know Kathy has talked to them about it, but we'll verify that they're actually doing it.
Any other questions? Mr. Sierra?
Just a quick follow-up on that. This morning, I happened to catch them coming down Cedar and Second Street, and it did seem like they were going a lot slower and in tandem and doing a better job.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Simmons?
Mr. Snyder, I've had a couple of emails since school had started about the traffic on West Avenue. Is there any kind of signage or any kind of anything you can do to help the residents? They said that getting out of their driveway is just horrendous since school has, started. And they were wondering if something could be changed or some kind of sign.
I know we received an email last week before school started in regards to that very issue. As of right now, I would tell you that last year when school was in session, and this would pertain to Elyria High, there were issues on West Avenue that weren't complete as far as the project. They didn't have all the vehicle detection, and the timing hadn't been completed yet at the time. It was just on loop call, and so the traffic lights should be working better now as far as moving traffic, and we will keep an eye on them. And if we need to adjust them, we can do that a lot easier now with the new, now the new systems are all in place. Now, I will say, there is one lane now, so that it can back up still, and when you have EMS up the street from you and they come out, they can tie it up for a moment. The preemption on there is not complete at this time, and we're kind of monitoring it without the preemption to see how it's working for them as well. So, but we are watching, and we'll do our best to move the traffic.
Thank you.
Engineer Schneider? Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you.
President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, Community Development Finance. Item number 2, Community Development and Finance. Item number 3, Community Development and Finance. Item number 4, Community Development Finance. Item number 5, Finance. Item number 6, Finance. Item number 7, Finance. Item number 8, Utility Safety and Environment and Finance. Items 9 through 13 received and placed on file in the clerk's office. Petitions and remonstrances from council members?
There are none.
Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby?
We have several, and I'll remind everybody that they've got 3 minutes to speak. Jeff Baxter, 160 Burns Road, subject Walmart, Reeser Point Crossing, Route 57/Chestnut.
Mr. Baxter, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Jeff Baxter, 160 Burns Road, Elyria, Ohio.
I come to you this evening to speak about Elyria. How did we get here? My topic is Research Point Crossing, and I just want to give everybody a little bit of history. I've done a lot of research on this over the last couple of months, and I thought I'd share that with you. So, you know, we have a nice picture here. There we go. Okay, thank you. So how it all began, 2005, there's a lot of planning that went on, probably some even before that. Here's a clip from the Chronicle, 2006, the construction announcement. This was under Mayor Bill Grace. It was a great day. Walmart was going to do something a little bit better for the citizens of Elyria because their promise was to build this new store and keep the old one on the north end still open. So, May of 2007, this was about 18 months later, the announcement, it was opened. And it was a superstore. This is a picture of the Walmart website, which is similar to what they're doing today. So here's the problem. The problem is Chestnut Commons area, where State Route 57 and Chestnut Ridge collide, and a little bit further east of that, where Chestnut Commons and Chestnut Ridge come together. The depiction here, it looks like spaghetti, and it is spaghetti. So, is this the solution? Here's from 2019, and we have Mr. O'Brien in the audience tonight. Is this the solution? Chestnut Commons was planned, and today it's open, and the traffic problems are increasing all the time still. This is was done under Mayor Holly Brenda. So this is just a quick summary of some of the Chronicle articles over the last 2 years, roughly. I don't think I caught all of them. I caught a lot of them. I've read all of them. I've read them twice. I've read them 3 times. There's a lot of information in here, but one thing I don't find is I don't find where any solutions were brought by City Council. So that's how we got here. So we have Chestnut Commons congestion. We have Chestnut Ridge and Route 57 standstills. It's still an issue today. We have try and get out of Defiance onto Chestnut Ridge during rush hour. You know, if you don't run into some other motorists who are having a great day and let you in, you're not getting out. Dewhurst and Chestnut Ridge is also a horrible intersection. And I realize that's because of the convergence of Elyria and some other township and county issues. But it's all got an impact on citizens. The citizens in Elyria, a lot of other places in Lorain County, I know people that won't even go to that place because of all the traffic issues around the holidays. And you know, there's a lot of frustration with City Council across 3 different administrations. You know, we saw the different ones listed out there.
Mr. President, 3 months are up.
Okay. Do we have another Bullocks Parkway scenario? Or do we have something different?
Thank you,
We have
Mr.
a good-looking road, but we don't have much else today.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter, for your comments. Just so that I can address this, this council and the law director's office and through our outside legal counsel have continuously tried to work with this developer, and we will continue to work with this developer because it's going to be a win-win situation, not only for the citizens, but for the city of Elyria. And we will continue to do that. Again, constant dialogue has been had, and we will continue to do that. And that's what I'm going to address at this particular time. Thank you.
Mr. Jim Miller, 5546 River Edge Drive, Elyria. Subject, Reeser Point Crossings.
Thank you. Jim Miller, 5546 River Edge Drive, Elyria, Ohio. Mr. President, members of council, Mr. Mayor, and distinguished guests, I rise this evening to present several questions that I have regarding Reeser Point Crossing, which you are considering opening tonight. This project has been widely talked about for some time, and numerous articles have appeared in the Chronicle, as Mr. Baxter pointed out. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a current lawsuit is also pending with the developer. With all this happening with respect to the road, I want to ask members of City Council, whether any of you have personally been out to the road to view it. Please raise your hand and let me know. The majority of you have. That's good. I'm glad to see it. So this road cost $5 million, I believe approximately $5 million for us to build. I would hope that considering the press and lawsuit that you would have gone out to visit it. Now, secondly, I want to point out that it's my understanding that the contractor was paid a success fee for finishing this project early because Walmart did not want the construction to impede the holiday season. So the road was finished ahead of schedule, and the city paid the contractor approximately $200,000 as a success fee as part of the contract. The city then proceeded to keep the road closed for an additional year. Seems to me that this was a wasted $200,000. In my mind, the $200,000 would have gone a long way to provide needed equipment. It's interesting that we were talking about body cameras tonight earlier, because the Chronicle reported in December of the past year that the city of Lorraine had purchased 50 body cameras for its police force for $200,000, the same amount. Thirdly, I've noticed that Reeser Point Crossing has no streetlights, no guardrails. It would seem to me that the city would have installed them on the street in the city limits during the past year when the road was shut down. I know that per the city's contract with the developer, the city was responsible for putting utilities along the road, including electric. The installation of light poles and guardrails would seem to be basic, especially since the street was closed for a year. Finally, I wonder what happened to the roundabout that was supposed to be installed on Broad Street and Reeser Point Crossing. The roundabout would have alleviated traffic concerns in that area where the traffic light probably will not. The roundabout was originally in the plans for the project. Who decided to remove it, and why was it removed? In closing, I'm concerned that council has not taken a more oversight role in this project. If the developer is successful in his lawsuit, it's quite likely that the citizens of Elyria will be left holding the bag on the $5 million for this road. This is just another example, I think, where we have to be proactive and we have to look at what's going on with our city and not just sit by and let things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
April Howley, 445 Bayberry Drive, subject flooding and property values.
Good evening. I'm April Hawley, 445 Bayberry Drive, Elyria, Ohio. The gentleman spoke about the flooding, but there's some things I'd like to say. We built the house in '95, and the last 4 years, we've had 3 floods in our basement. We've ate it or turned it into the insurance, and our value for our insurance has went up. I find it a little ridiculous that it cannot be corrected. You build all those homes over there. This is stuff that comes off the roof and goes right down into the sewers. Nothing has been done to enlarge it, to correct it. I'm hoping it will get done. Try to live in a nice neighborhood and have a nice home, and it's not fun to go down in your basement and see things floating. Second, property value. Wow. $43,000, they raised my property value. Do you think I'm going to be able to get $189,000 out of my home if I go to sell it and I have to tell people, yeah, we've had 3 floods? No, that ain't going to happen. I'm on a fixed income. It's very hard to come up with extra money. It's absolutely ridiculous. Don't get it. I spoke to Mr. Jesse. I called the mayor's office and spoke to a young man there. And I do believe I may have spoke to the gentleman, Mr. Corzan, about the flooding. You know, Elyria has become, and excuse the expression, a dump. You go downtown Elyria, it's pathetic. And I'm sorry I feel that way, but I do. As I was growing up, there was all kind of stores down there. There was a lot of things happening, going on, and nothing is going now. So why am I paying all this money for things and nothing's being done? I was told by Mr. Jesse that Mr. Snodgrass said, oh, just because the property values have went up, Doesn't mean your property taxes are gonna go up. I'm not dumb. I know they're going up. I heard that they want to raise the value of everything 90%. Okay, well, that's fine, but give me something in return. Give me a nice town. Give me things I can look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Council President, I'd just like to respond, if you don't mind.
Mayor Whitfield.
So a couple of things. Thank you for sharing your frustration. I don't think you're alone in feeling some of the frustration around flooding. I think that's why Superintendent Corzine kind of shared some of these historical rains we've been getting as a city, and we're going to do whatever we can. But some of these pieces are just environmental. But that's not really the piece I wanted to address. That's the idea of that you shared around Elyria being a dump, and I take issue with that because there's so much good going on in the city right now, and there's so much good to focus on. You mentioned downtown. I don't know if you were here this past weekend, but we had hundreds of people down in the square enjoying themselves for a concert downtown in the square. We had a restaurant that was full to over capacity with their windows open for the event. We have a library that's going to be doing a grand opening October 2nd. I can't announce one of the other projects, but we have Mr. Flanagan, who owns a number of properties, who's doing development. So there is things going on. I think part of our job that we don't do a great job of is telling our story and telling people what's going on in the city. So people just don't know, so they assume nothing's going on. So part of my commitment is to try to help change that and make sure we communicate what's going on. In terms of the value that I'm hoping you're getting from your property value increasing, in many communities, their properties are being devalued. So when I hear that, I'm like, yo, that's a win that the city's properties are going up in value, because that means better schools. It could also mean better parks. But I get when people are on fixed income, that's not necessarily a good thing. And that's how gentrification happens. That's how people get pushed out of their homes because they can't afford them anymore. So that's where we got to make sure we have supportive services within the city to make sure people on fixed income don't feel this burden as well. And so I take that point, and I'm going to make sure we do our best to try to make sure there's other things that kind of supplement people on fixed income. I think Councilwoman Davis brought that up months ago about, hey, we need to think about folks on fixed income and how can we support them. So I just wanted to push back a little bit on there's nothing to do here and this is a dump. This is a great place. I think we have momentum going forward. We got slowed down a little bit by COVID, but I think we're still moving forward strong. Is it as fast as I'd like it to be? No, but I think there's a lot to be appreciative of here in the city. I'm going to try to communicate that better. And then to your point about the flooding in pieces, I'm going to make sure we work with Director Corzine to try to get these infrastructure projects moving. But I hope you hear that he's saying these are historical rains that we're dealing with as well. So that's it. Thank you, Council President. Yep. So definitely, I'm going to schedule some time to talk with you and Director Corzine to kind of get some context around that. And you can push back on us and tell us, and we'll just look at the numbers. If they're wrong, then we'll fix it. We're committed to trying to fix problems. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Whitfield. Marcio Tolentino, Friends of Tolentino, subject Elyria, Ward 6. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. President. I am Marcio Tolentino, resident of Elyria 6th Ward, at 127 Churchside Drive.
Sir, I'm sorry, we're having a hard time understanding that you have your mask on, but it is a hard time to understand what you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
All right. Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Byrd, Mrs. Mitchell, Mrs. Key, all the members of the City Council and the audience. I am Marcio Tolentino. I'm also a United States Army Reserve veteran. residing at 127 Churchside Drive in Elyria, Ohio, 44035. And the reason why I came, well, this is my second time, and I came, I think this is one of the last meetings, and I didn't know the procedures to speak. And I want to make a statement, but before, I like to read from the Constitution of the State of Ohio. Let's see, because I read. Article 1, page 6, I guess clause 20, powers reserved. So page 6. I know I got 3 minutes. I'll try to do it quickly as I can. Okay, it says power reserved to the people. Clause or section 20, clause 20. This enumeration of rights shall not be constructed to impair or deny others retained by the people, and all powers not herein delegated remains with the people. Preservation of the freedom of choose health care and health care coverage. Clause 21. Well, you can read it. I don't have much time. But when I came the first time, thanks God, I thank you for all wearing your mask. This is 100% COVID-19 vaccine proof. We deserve better. I would like to make a statement. 100% COVID-19 vaccine proof. From Wuhan virus to unvaccinated pandemic. Scientists, TV networks, from Wuhan virus, TV networks, people in power are saying that we, the unvaccinated people, are the problem where, in truth, scientists were working at the lab when this COVID-19 broke through the lab. So I say, this is a virus of scientists, and they must give us 100% COVID-19 vaccine proof, which, by the way,
Mr. President, 3 minutes are up.
Excuse me?
Your 3 minutes are up.
Oh, well, I have 3 questions, very quick. Why local government elected by the people has not advocated to scientists for 100% COVID-19 vaccine proof for the people? Has the vacant building issue been resolved? PMP, policeman power. Has the policeman power been resolved?
President,
Thank
Mr.
you very
Martin,
much.
Thank you.
Very much.
We appreciate you coming, having your information about the COVID-19 and where things are at with that. Thank you.
Well, that has affect to everyone, every ward, every city. People are crazy. We are losing our people. Thank you.
Nancy Arnold, 451 Bayberry Drive. Subject, backup of sewers, also tax hikes.
Good evening, everybody, Mayor, President. Mr. Jesse, my question to you is, I'm not going to go into the sewers, because thanks to Mr. Corzine, he's doing quite a bit of work, and Mrs. Hawley is my neighbor, and I'm representing the rest of our neighbors here on Bayberry. But we've all been saddened by all this water that we've received lately in our basements, the destruction that it's caused, and the money that the poor people have put out of their pocket to fix their basements again. And the Walmart situation, that's ridiculous. It really is, Mayor. We've got to get that fixed. We got that beautiful road that'll exit and get rid of so much traffic. But Mr. Jesse, my question to you is, fall is approaching. Our streets do not get plowed. I'm sorry. They don't. I mean, it's gotten to the point, and Mayor, I'm going to ask you for your help on this one. We got to get our streets plowed. It's to the point where it gets packed down, then it's nothing but an ice rink. It's ridiculous. Go ahead, Mr. Jesse.
Mr. Jesse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, through you. I certainly sympathize that we had 2 really large snowstorms last year, and I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one. Bayberry just got left behind. I had several calls from people on Bayberry. I drove down there with my Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I had a tough time getting around. Unfortunately, it was just overlooked by the crew. Whenever the thing is, you have substitute drivers sometimes. Sometimes we have issues with not having enough employees across all departments. So the bottom line is, if you're ever in a situation where you feel Bayberry has not been plowed in a timely manner, call me.
But Mr. Jesse, I have to be honest with you. It's not just this last couple snowfalls. I've lived there 21 years. Bayberry is like a stepchild. Trust me.
Well,
Why? I pay my taxes, and I pay good money for taxes.
Anytime you feel that Bayberry has not been plowed in a timely manner, call me. And I will reach out immediately to the street department and make sure it gets done. Now, another thing, we've changed our policy, and Director Brubaker may want to address this as well. We had a policy until this year that we wouldn't plow streets if it was under 4 inches, is that right? And that caused the problem when, if it's under 4 inches, it's not the kind of thing where you're going to get stuck in snow. But what happens if the temperature stays low is that 4 inches of snow gets packed down.
Yes, sir.
Becomes like an ice rink, and then it doesn't melt until the temperature goes up.
Right.
And we don't salt what are called side streets. We only salt the main roads. But this year we changed our policy, and again, I'll let Mr. Brubaker clarify that, and we rescinded that 4-inch minimum, and that is going to help with the pack down ice in terms of, making it very, very slippery.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Jesse is correct. Prior to the beginning of this year, the city policy was if snowfall did not exceed 4 inches in a snowfall in a single event, the side streets, secondaries, however we choose to call them, would not get done. At the beginning of 2021, I met with the mayor, and we as administration decided to adjust that, particularly because of what you just described there. Not only are we reducing that number, we're also looking at, before we did not start secondaries until about 10 to 12 hours after the snowfall, which again, as you stated, causes that snow to get packed down. What we've instituted at the last snowstorm last year and moving forward is we are going to start calling in our crews to do secondaries even as the snowfall is still coming, but not waiting 10 hours after it's already fallen. So we're trying to get to those streets sooner rather than later, and that should alleviate the problem of that packing down. And again, we have a lot of streets out there. We have a lot of drivers. We have a lot of new employees that are out plowing, some of them for the first time. Streets, unfortunately, is not an excuse. They will get missed, but if you miss a street, council members know they call the administration, and we send a crew out to do that. But that's what we're looking at and have been doing since the end of the last snowfall.
Okay, I'm counting on you.
Very good.
Do you have my number?
I don't want to have to take my snowblower down Bayberry. Trust me.
Do you have my number?
Would you kindly give it to me?
I'll give it to the whole public. It's 440-322-7766. It's Garfield 12323.
Yeah, we'll probably become best friends, trust me.
That's all right. I like friends.
Very good. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, and the last gentleman is David Cuppage, Reeser Court for Development.
Excuse me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council persons, Mayor Whitfield. My name is David Cuppage. I represent DBR Commercial Realty LLC, and it is the developer's position that council ought to pause, slow down, stop the process, look around, and see what's happening. I noticed one of the gentlemen asked council members who actually went out to see the road. I think everyone raised their hands. I'd ask another question. Who actually went out to see the road August 13th, August 25th during one of these rain events? I listened to Mr. Corazon provide his I'm not going to call it testimony, but his presentation to this council, and he spoke about, these historic rain events and climate change. And he spoke about all of the challenges that the city's infrastructure is facing today. And he talked about having all of these studies, and he's reviewing it, and he's talking to the city engineer, and he's raising all of these issues with respect to the city's infrastructure before I even got up here to talk and say what I had to say. And that's exactly what I'm saying. This property, this development, this road has become an unmitigated disaster. You go out there after a rain event and it's flooded. You can't develop it. There's no guardrails, there's no lighting, there's detention ponds that are unprotected. We believe, the developer believes, that this constitutes a safety hazard. If a driver drives down this road without lights, without guardrails, swerves, veers, comes off the road into one of the ponds, the unprotected ponds, into a flood area, into one of the drainage ditches that were dug on the property in the middle of the night, that could be a problem. And we have serious concerns about what is happening on our property. I want to address a few points that were brought out today by some of the members of the audience, I believe by President Stewart himself. The developer, Mr. Reeser, is ready, willing, and able to sit down with council, with the mayor, with the engineers, with Mr. Corazon, and discuss all of these issues. We will bring our engineers to the table. We would ask that you bring your engineers to the table. We have, we visually inspected this property, and we visually inspected the road. It's 4 to 5 feet above grade in places. It's creating damming effects. It's creating problems to the North Ridgeville, to the drainage ditch on the border with North Ridgeville. It's actually draining back into the property. The detention ponds are not working. There are many problems with the design of this project. There are many problems with the construction of this project. The developer has very serious concerns about what is happening. And a lot of this happened without his input with respect to design decisions. Right. And I would like to point that out as well. My 3 minutes are up. I thank you for your time. All we're asking for is a pause. Let's talk to Mr. Corazon. Let's talk to the engineers. Let's find out what's going on with this project. Thank you.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions, first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. Resolution finding that the city has unfit for public use certain city property and declared an emergency.
Clerk, I was wondering if it's the Safety Service Director regarding the delinquent.
One sec. Okay, hold on. Let's get this in order then. Okay. All right, just a little bit out of order here, so I think we'll get back on track here.
Very good.
No worries. Sponsored by Finance, a resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said accounts to Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Yep. Resolution 2021-19. Sponsored by Finance. A resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of the 2020 delinquent stormwater fees, directing the clerk of council to certify said list to Lorraine County Auditor and declare emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Did you do the emergency?
Excuse me?
Was there emergency on that one?
Yeah, I believe so.
And when that was motioned? Did you
Is
take
there
a vote
an-
on it?
Point of order, I'm sorry. Is it an emergency measure on this?
Yes.
On the emergency. So let's go point of order. We got the suspension on the emergency. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2021-20. Sponsored by Finance, a resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of lot mowing charges and directing the Clerk of Council to certify said list to Lorraine County Auditor.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2021. Where's that? Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. A resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of final assessments for the replacement of private service sewer lines, directing the Clerk of Council to certify said list to the Lorraine County Auditor and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Pardon me. Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2021-22. Sponsored by Finance. A resolution estimating the amount of active, inactive, and interim funds to be awarded and deposited for the 5-year period beginning December 1st, 2021, and fixing the date for the designation of the depositories, authorizing the Finance Director to accept bids from banks and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. The suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2021-23. Sponsored by Finance. A resolution finding that the city has unfit for public use certain city property and declare emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion? Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Resolution 2021-24. That's all resolutions. First reading.
Resolutions, second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions, third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances first reading.
Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Safety Service to dispose of, by best means possible, city property that is unfit for public use and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question has been called on the suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-130. Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance accepting the dedication of certain lands, easements, and right-of-way for the installation of streets and utilities as provided for in the plat for Reserve Point Crossing.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Sarah. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question has been called on the suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-131. Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance accepting the dedication of certain lands, easements, and rights-of-way for the installation of streets and utilities as provided for in the final plat of Four Seasons at Chestnut Ridge, Subdivision Number 3.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Sarah. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-132. Sponsored by Utility Safety Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with CT Consultants, Inc. for a preliminary engineering study on the water pumping plant and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question has been called on suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-133. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year renewal of the lease agreement with the Horizons Education Centers, an Ohio nonprofit corporation, to utilize the city's East Recreation Center and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-134. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Ohio to utilize the city's South Recreation Center and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question been called on suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-135. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-61 to add 2 additional parcels of real property to be transferred to the Elyria City School District pursuant to the exchange agreement with the Elyria City School District, authorizing an amendment to the exchange agreement to add such additional parcels to be transferred and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-136. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance amending ordinance 2016-6, known as the salary ordinance, to include a new position with the Elyria firefighters, IAFF Local 474, and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-137. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance amending Elyria Codified Ordinances, Chapter 165, Employees Generally, Section 165.33C.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-138. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2021-50, known as the 2021 Permanent Appropriation Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-139. Sponsored by Utility, Safety and Environment and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit applications for the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant Program administered by the Ohio Department of Development in partnership with the Ohio EPA, and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-140. Sponsored by Utility, Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the re-roofing of the powerhouse building at the wastewater pollution control plant and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-141. Sponsored by Utility, Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2021 CDBG Penfield Storm Sewer Project.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-142. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for the purchase of a crosswalk signal for the East River Street crosswalk between the hospital ER and the parking garage.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules.
Second by Mr. Baird. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-143. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for the purchase of left turn barriers for East Broad Street, west of State Route 57.
Ms. Mitchell?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by, on the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-144. That's all ordinances first reading.
The second reading?
There are none.
Ordinance is third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development, request the law director, safety service director, building inspector, and engineer on Monday, 9/13, beginning at 6 p.m. All items referred, council chambers. Joint CD Finance, request the mayor, law director, finance director, safety service director, and engineer on 9/13, beginning at 6 p.m. All items referred, council chambers. Finance, request the mayor, law director, finance director, safety service director, and engineer on 9/13, immediately following joint. All items referred, council chambers. And Utility Safety Environment, request the law director, safety service director, and engineer on Wednesday, 9/8, beginning at 6 p.m. All items referred in the chamber. And Strategic Planning, request the mayor, safety service director, auditor, and solicitor on Monday, 9/20, immediately following council meeting. All items referred.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Miscellaneous unfinished business. Mr. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, two things. I see our police chief is back there and our fire chief is right there. I just want to say publicly that on our Chronicle Telegram Not Forgotten Box kickball game, the Elyria City Council Watchdogs versus the Safety Forces, you're going down. I say that publicly. I'm pointing to the back of the field. So we'll see. The other thing, I'd just like to respond to one thing that Mr. Miller said in his comments. There was a reason the roundabout was taken out. We discussed it here in chambers. It may have actually been in the newspaper, but Mr. Snyder, I believe it was because there wasn't room for larger trucks to make that turn. Was that the reason we took that out?
Mr. Schneider?
Mr. Snyder, if you recall.
But I know we had discussion about it, and there was a very logical reason.
In order to put the roundabout in, there was a couple things it was going to need. One, we were going to need more property than what we originally had without going on to develop property even further, as a roundabout requires more room. So that was one of the big reasons. Another one was they take longer to design, and we didn't have a long time period to finish the designs.
And I think it was also because Mrs. Mitchell doesn't like roundabouts.
No.
And thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Oswald?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to give a little shout out to Ray Noble. He's one of our VIPs in the city of Elyria, happens to be in the 4th Ward. Ray was mailed a proclamation in the matter of proclaiming September 2021 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month throughout Lorraine County. He was sent this by the 3 commissioners. Ray has been involved with this support group. It was called Men to Men and Prostate Cancer Support Group, and it's been going on for approximately 28 years. Ray has been instrumental in this and keeps that going. Ray has been battling a few issues with himself with cancers and things. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Ray, for all the work that you've done for the 28 years. And also, I believe you did get a proclamation or a letter from Governor DeWine. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to Ray Noble for all the work that he's done.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Oswald, and thank you, Mr. Noble, for your continued efforts and work on that. Is there any more coming before miscellaneous and unfinished business? Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Chief Prinesky, regarding the kickball game. Just make sure life here is on standby. Thank you.
Mr. Sear, did you have something you wanted to weigh in on?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? If not, Mr. Baird?
Hearing no further business, I move we adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Baird, second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. This meeting is adjourned.
I think the first time the neighbor took that grass before we got through. Oh, really? Thank you.
Hey, take care, thanks.
All right, we'll see you later.
Thanks.
I will swing by your place. It works for Dean Sawyer.
Yeah. I had talked to Mark about it, but that's why I told him to swing by, but I don't know if he's going to or not. I'm out.